am. It's a wonderful thing. You train your car, right? I'm glad to be here. Thank you. And on autumn day, gorgeous. Listen, I have come today to talk to you about a period. Not a period of time. No, I'm talking about a dot on the page. Just a period. That's all I want you to think about today. And again tonight, it's just this little period. And as periods go, it's just like any other period. It's just a little black dot on a piece of paper, mark punctuation. But this period is a pretty important period. In fact, I would say that this period is the most important period in your life. And you've had a lot of periods, right? I mean, you're masters at periods. You come to points, and you make decisions, and you change from one thought to another. But this period is essential if you call yourself a follower of Jesus Christ. Now, I don't know anything about it. I know a few, but not much. I don't know anything about it. The first time I've been in your fellowship, I think I've met 2 or 3 of you along the way through the university. And I've been in Athens many times. But I don't know you. So I don't know why you're here on a Sunday morning. But my guess is that you're here because you have, at the very least, an interest in knowing more about the Lord Jesus Christ. That's safe. And many of you are here because you are committed followers to Him. You have said, this is where I will be. And so you've come to hear more, to learn more. And because of that, because of your interest, and because of your profession of faith in Christ, this period is extremely important. And let me tell you why this period is important even more. Now, I have a theory. You see the color of my hair. It's not my first rodeo. It's been around a while. Oh, and you know what? When your hair turns this color, people think you know stuff. Now, the truth is, you don't know more yet. But they're thinking. You can use that. I'm just saying. So, does this bother anybody about me down here? Because I noticed when y'all sat down, you said, kind of, there's a migration sort of back. So I've learned, unless I would be very lonely up there, I come down here and move around. Gentlemen, the sound good. If I get in front of that speaker, is it going to do bad things with this microphone? We're good. I come all the way back to the guys. Oh. Now you get the idea already that I'm not a classic preacher. Is that okay with you? You may have come to hear a very classic. Now I can wear a dark suit tie and I can be like, but I don't think it works as well as my move. So I'm just going to come visit for a while. You okay with that? I'm Mark Foley. Hey, Jeff, good to see you. Enjoy watching football. Looking good. You played football somewhere along the way. By the way, we're not here to talk about football. Everybody's happy this weekend, right? In Alabama, it's always good to know. When I go and show up on a Sunday, I want to know what happened Saturday. Because I went to Jasper one day. Man, I'm telling you, I came into town to speak that the next morning. Now, I'm brand new in the state. I'm out of Louisiana and Texas. I don't think about Alabama, Auburn. So I drive into Jasper. It is a happening town on an autumn morning. Walmart parking lot is full. So I go to the hotel, take a nap, get up late in the afternoon, and go out to find something to eat. Drive by the Walmart, and the parking lot is empty. I thought something bad has happened in Jasper, Alabama. We go to a restaurant. I'm the only person in the restaurant. The guy that owns it is not paying much attention to me. He's watching television. I said, what's going on? He said, it's Iron Bowl. I said, what's Iron Bowl? All right. The period. Now, here's why the period's important. I've come to the conclusion, as a follower of Jesus Christ who is a citizen of the United States, that I don't live in America anymore. I live in a place that's a whole lot more like the place where the little girl woke up In the movie The Wizard of Oz, had the little puppy and said, "Tell her this, you were in Kansas." Because the rules have changed, haven't they? The place that we thought we lived in and the way we think things ought to work doesn't work that way anymore. Everything's different. The only thing different is we can't get back to Kansas. And a lot of folk I know who show up in Baptist churches on Sunday mornings are doing their very best to try to go back to Kansas because they feel good about that. They want to be there. They want to live there. They want to act in the same way. They want the rules to be the same way that they were in Kansas. But here's the news that I've come to bring you. It has a lot to do with the period I'm talking about. You can't get back to Kansas. You will never again in your life live in the type of land that you thought America was and you may still think it should be. The bridge is out, the bus is down. You will never again be in Kansas. Now here's the point. The expectation of Jesus for those who follow him has not changed. All right. That means if you look to see what Jesus expects, and wherever you go to find that out in Scripture in many ways, he said, "Be my witnesses and go make disciples and teach people what I've taught you. Tell others, follow me," all of those things. Those expectations remain. Now, you boil all of that down, and I'm just going to ask you to trust me with this point of interpretation of Scripture. You boil all of the expectations of Jesus down, it comes down to one very simple word: influence. The influence of Jesus in me of such sufficiency and substance that then there is influence of him through me where I stand each day. Our responsibility as followers of Jesus Christ, I'm presuming a little bit, Pastor, on the people. I know that's dangerous to do that. I don't presume that you are all born again believers, but many of you are. So let me just talk to you who are. The expectation of Jesus has not changed. The world around us has. That means our responsibility remains to influence the world in which we live, not the world in which we wish we lived. Got it? On that premise, I bring to you in pretty straight terms. Listen, I want to see this land influenced. I'm passionate about that. So I don't mince words. Telling Dan you can only throw a rock so far if you don't like what I have to say, because I'm going south, man. That's why the period to which I am about to introduce to you is absolutely critical. You find the period in the book of Mark. I don't know why I keep going to the book of Mark. I kind of like it. First chapter. And you find it between verses 17 and 18. You'll see it right there, that little tiny black dot. Right between two verses. Now I'm going to start reading, because if you understand the importance of the period, you've got to understand what comes in front of it. Right? So let's look at what comes in front. One day, as Jesus was walking along the shore of the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and his brother Andrew throwing a net into the water. Now, isn't that a curious thing? These two men is throwing a net into the water. Well, the reason they were throwing a net into the water is because they're fishermen. That's an important thing to keep in mind, because something that Jesus said refers to the fact that they're fishermen. They're throwing the net in the water. These two regular guys. Now, we know the rest of the story, and so we tend to assign some characteristics to these guys that they did not yet have. They didn't. My compliments to the Renaissance artists, but these two guys had no halos shining around their head. What was their work? Commercial fishermen. What do you think they smell like? Fish. Fresh fish, old fish. That's what they did. They were two guys just like many of us, regular people, engaged in the regular work of their life. And Jesus encounters them. And he said, called out to them, "Come follow me, and I will show you how to fish for people," period. Now, don't read ahead. Just deal with this. In the midst of their common, everyday existence in a hard place, being a commercial fisherman in ancient Israel and Galilee under Roman occupation was a tough business. And it never ended. If you want to eat, you go fish. If you want cash in your pocket, you go sell the fish. You miss a day, you don't eat, you don't have the cash. I mean, it was relentless. These guys were doing what they did every day. People just like you and me. To whom Jesus comes, stands before them, and issues what I think is the most I'm checking my phraseology here. Understood. That doesn't make any sense. Misunderstood. Underattended. And first of all the directives to anyone who would follow him. And we gloss over it, and frankly, we trifle with it. Because if we believed what he said to those two men, and by extension what he says to us, if we really believe that, this place in which we live would not look like some crazy place called Athens. The reason America looks and acts as it does is because the salt, the expectation of Jesus to influence, has not been attended by his church. So let's talk about what it means to follow Jesus on his terms. Not mine, his. We'll do that this morning, we'll do it again tonight. And I'm going to teach you all I can in the time that we have together about what it means to follow Jesus. If I teach you all that I know about following Jesus in 2 30-minute segments, you need to be worried I don't know very much. So we won't nearly exhaust the subject, but I want your attention back to it. I want you to think about this concept of following Jesus, this requirement of follow me. I want you to nail it down. I want you to view it in ways you've never viewed it before. Now, here's something I want to share a story with you. I've told the story so many times, I made a video of it. So guys, get ready. I'm coming to you. Don't turn on yet. Not yet. Real soon. I'm 66 years old. At my age 60, I had an experience. An epiphany. I love the word epiphany. I had an encounter with God that was not a self-saving. I've been a Christian since I was 11. I got it at age 11. I've been a believer and a follower, and I thought I knew what following Jesus meant until this experience. Now, I can tell you about it, but I want to show it to you. So give your attention to the screens. Guys, let's run the video, and then I'll come and talk a little bit more after.
Occasionally, I find it helpful to stand back a bit and gain a broader look at my general position on things. As I step back and comprehend the requirements of Jesus from that wider perspective, I see 3 primary hinge points in his teaching. The third hinge point is found in what is often called the Great Commission. It's in Matthew chapter 28, and the point, go make disciples. It's the favorite hinge point of my evangelical tribe, and we've made a life's work of disciple-making projects. The second hinge point, also in Matthew chapter 22 and elsewhere, We call it the Great Commandment. The point there? Love God supremely and love people. I note that while we people of faith talk about these directives as a whole, we don't perform all that well. But the first hinge point, found in Matthew and in Mark, is recorded among Jesus' first encounters with the men who would become his early disciples. "Follow me," he said, "and I will show you how to influence people." It seems from my broad look that the rest of his teaching and that of the greater New Testament is essentially an amplification of these three essentials: follow me, love God and people, and make disciples. So here's my observation and my question. How can we make disciples if we don't love people? And how can we learn to love people if we don't love God? And how can we learn to love God if we don't follow Jesus? I think there's a reason he introduced these essentials in the order we find them. So it comes down to the first and, in my estimation, the most important of these three hinge points. Follow me, and I will show you how. I've thought about those words for a long time. It seems to me that if we ever got the following part right, the loving and disciple-making parts would flow naturally from it. So I want to tell you a story of how I came to understand what following Jesus means. It's a story that took 60 years to form. When I was a boy in the 1950s, my parents gave me a book entitled World War II Flying Aces. I read it so many times that the pages became dog-eared and stained and loose from the binding. Those men became my heroes, and the machines they flew, my passion. One of those machines captured all of my imagination. It was called Mustang. The P-51 Mustang was the most capable propeller-driven aircraft of its era. Sleek lines, massive power, distinctive sound, unmatched maneuverability. It is, in my estimation, one of the finest aircraft ever designed in any era. I flew that Mustang. No, that's not right. I soared in the Mustang, in my dreams, and in my imagination, and still do. But the course of life assigned to me did not include the need to become a pilot, although I did learn to fly out of an incurable curiosity about how to do it. But the awesome and beautiful Mustang remained in the safest of places, in my dreams. It was Christmas morning of my 60th year, opening a card from my wife. On it was a picture of a P-51 Mustang. The short of the tale is that Marilyn and our children had co-opted to provide a flight in the airplane of my dreams. Let's just say, it was a moment. So what I tell you next is the fulfillment of a 50-year dream and the most impactful God lesson of my adult life. What I thought would be a sit and fly around was, in fact, a full aerobatic flight lesson. The aircraft was a 1945 D model converted for training. We went through an extensive orientation on the ground and buckled in. I had the back seat with a set of controls, and my instructor, John, had the front. John went meticulously through the checklist, always a good idea in a 65-year-old airplane, occasionally asking my opinion on the readiness of essential operational parts, the names and specific function of which I did not fully comprehend. So I said they looked good, figuring that was the quickest way to the sky. Apparently, John agreed, and after a few minutes, I heard a whine and saw that massive four-bladed prop begin to rotate. A supercharged 12-cylinder Merlin engine has a distinctive sound when heard from the ground. But in the cockpit, it isn't the sound you notice. It's that 2,000 horsepower part spinning on the nose. You actually have to counter-torque the rudder to keep the thing straight. As we taxied to the runway, John came over the radio with the first of 4 impacting statements that day. "Mark," he said, "there's something real important I want you to understand. This is my airplane, not yours. But I want you to fly it. So do what I tell you to do, when I tell you to do it, and you will have the most marvelous experience of your life. You will fly this Mustang." "Yes, sir." It was the best response I could think of. I figured Roger was a bit too cliche and the old trucker 10-4 would just be embarrassingly wrong. So yes, sir, it was. John lined up on the center line, advanced the throttle, whipped up all 2,000 of the horses, and in a rush of seconds in gray concrete, we were airborne. At about 500 feet, John wiggled the stick and said, "The aircraft is yours." I had been waiting for those words for 50 years. I was flying a P-51 Mustang, hands on stick, feet on rudder. "I have the aircraft," I replied, and the grin was from ear to ear. Then John gave the second of the 4 pronouncements. "If you feel resistance on the stick or the rudder, don't fight it. It's me keeping you out of trouble." That sounded like a really good idea. Yes, sir. We gained altitude, and for the next hour, John talked me through maneuvers with that airplane that are hard to adequately describe. I could try, but that's not the point of this story. Let's just say that a 4G turn upside down in a P-51 Mustang is just about the coolest thing in the cool book. As I pulled level out of the last roll, John said there was one more thing I needed to learn. I was to follow another aircraft. He gave me heading and altitude, and I flew us to the sighting of the other ship. And in accordance with my understanding of following, I took up a position about a quarter mile back and a couple of 100 feet above the other plane. I was following. I had him in sight. I was going the same direction, and it seemed prudent to maintain plenty of room between us. Then came pronouncement number 3. John said, "That's not how we follow. Pull level on his left." As I completed the move, still about a quarter mile out, he asked, "Do you see the star on the side of his fuselage?" "Yes, sir." "Look out your right wing. You see the wing light on the tip?" "Yes, sir." John said, "I want you to put your light in his star and keep it there." John? We'd have to be pretty close to do that." "Precisely," he said. Then started a pretty shaky attempt to comply with my instructor. It's easy to fly solo flips and loops. All you have to do is pull back on the stick. The airplane does the rest. But the light and the star thing, that requires discipline and skill that I didn't have. And it required that I close to within feet of another airplane and submit myself to the discretion of that pilot, neither of which I was particularly keen on doing. As I clumsily and slowly closed the distance between the 2 planes, John delivered impact statement number 4. "Mark, I know this feels unnatural, but the more you do it, the more natural it becomes. Now put your light in his star and keep it there. Match him move for move. It's the only job you have." And that's when it hit me. That's what Jesus meant when he said, "Follow me, and I'll show you how." I've reflected on that moment. Following Jesus is not done from some removed position so distant that Jesus cannot be immediately experienced, and from which we who presume to follow try to control the degree to which we comply with his directives. Following Jesus is a matter of position and proximity. The position is subservient, and the proximity is extremely close, so that when others look for Jesus, they see us. And when others look for us, they see Jesus. The leader and the follower move as one. I can assure you that putting one's moving light in another's moving star and keeping it there is a matter requiring intense concentration. I wasn't looking around much. My attention in the sky that day was riveted upon maintaining position and proximity. So it is with following Jesus. He doesn't interrupt our following to send us off to fly loops and flips and impress him with our skills. He gives us assignments and leads us into and through and beyond engagements, most often into seemingly impossible engagements, requiring ever more dependence upon him. "Follow me," he said. "I'll show you how." So there's my story. It took 60 years to tell it. This life you're enjoying is mine, not yours, Jesus says. But I want you to live it. So do what I tell you to do when I tell you to do it. And you will have the most marvelous experience. You will live this life fully beyond your imagination. If you feel resistance on the controls, don't fight it. It's me keeping you out of trouble. Now pull level with me, close up, just off my shoulder. Put your light in my star and keep it there. I know this feels unnatural, but the more you do it, the more natural it becomes. Now, put your light in my star and keep it there. Match me move for move. It's the only job you have. There is an addendum to my story. I told this story in the hearing of a friend who had been an F-4 Phantom pilot in Vietnam. He pulled me aside and said, "You know that light in the star thing? It saved my life one night." Here's what he told me, as best I can recall. We were returning from a night mission over North Vietnam in heavy weather. We were in two-ship formations, flying on instruments. I had sustained some damage, and on the way home, my systems went down. I had engines and controls, but I couldn't see anything. Had no idea where I was or what direction I was going or how I was flying. The only thing I could see was a fleeting glimpse of light from the cockpit of my wingman, and I moved toward it, took position alongside. He said it was crazy how close we were flying, but it was the only way home. Many who will hear this story, including the teller, face situations that seem impossible. In the midst of those times, Jesus reminds, "Follow me." I know this feels unnatural, but the more you do it, the more natural it becomes. Now, put your light in my star. Keep it there. Match me move for move. It's the only job you have. I'll get you home.
I love that last part. That sentence. Sounded good when you read it. That's how you follow Jesus. No one ever taught me that. It was sort of assumed in our experience in churches like ours that we just get it somehow. But what I realized after that experience, as I reflected on what occurred in that aircraft that day, that I was following kind of like I was at every other aircraft. A lot of distance back, a little bit high, lots of margin, so I can do what I want to do when I want to do it. Until the instructor said, "That's not how it's done." Now, Jesus walked up to two men in the middle of their work. Regular people, just like us. I expect they were good men. In fact, we know that Andrew had been paying attention to John the Baptist, that John the Baptist had referred him to Jesus. And Andrew had begun to experience the wonder of being around Jesus. He was so moved by that, he went a little later to find his brother Simon and said, "You've got to meet this guy." And John, first chapter of John records that first meeting when Simon, who we now come to know as Peter, met Jesus. And Jesus gave him that nickname, Peter the Rock. And we've known about that ever since. And it was after that he's had some experience with Jesus, some introductory encounter. And after that, Jesus came to them in the middle of their work, doing what they did every day, doing the things that defined their lives, and said, "Follow me, and I will show you how fish for people, period. Now imagine that you are standing in the place where Simon and Andrew were standing that day, surrounded by the things that define your life, surrounded by the people and the activities and the physical attributes and the geography which defines your life. And the one who we know is the creator, master, and commander of all that is or ever will be, comes to you and says, follow me, parentheses, on my terms, and I will show you how to influence the world in my name. Now that is exactly what happened. If you are in this room and you call yourself a believer, follower of Jesus Christ, that moment occurred. Just as in my experience in the air that day, an instructor said, follow him, and I went after it. And I got in a tail chase a quarter mile back with lots of room. Follow me, and I'll show you how. Period. And when those guys heard that, imagine what is contained in the period. The most essential period of their lives, and I would say the most essential period of yours and mine, what is contained when the Creator, Master, and Commander of all that is stands before you and says, follow me. And then he waits, he stops. He just waits. What's going on? What's going on in the minds of these guys? Where are we going? What's involved? Is there a compensation plan I need to hear about? How about retirement? I've got some vacation periods in this thing. Do I need to take anything with me? Do I need to go tell my wife or my husband what's going on? What follow you where, by the way, because I kind of like to have a little information about these things. And, maybe I'd like to negotiate a little deal where we can talk and I can tell you where I'd like to go. Jesus is just quiet. I can imagine his dark brown eyes are looking at him, got a little half smile on his face, because he loves him already. He knows what Peter's got in him. He just looks. Now, before we talk about what comes next, after the period, I just want you to soak on that period. One of my impressions as I learned how formation flying is done that day was that, as it applies to the walk with Christ, is when people come looking for Jesus, they see us, or should. Really? I mean, isn't that the point? And when people come looking for us, as they do each day, they see Jesus because we are that close. And so my question to you, before we talk about what comes after the period, is how are you handling the period when Jesus now, even though you've had introduction to him, even though you may have had experience with him, he comes to you even now, even though you have been around for a while, and you're at the same period. What are you doing with that? Are you a follower on his terms or on yours? Are you a follower who said, well, I've kind of gotten to a point in my life where I need to relax a little bit, so Lord, let's talk about how that works for me. How are you handling the period? Because that's where you are. Here's what comes next. After Jesus said this to them, after he stood and watched them for a little while, after he watched that question spinning in their minds, probably watched them look at one another and shrug a little bit, then here's what comes next. And they left their nets at once and followed him. There's three things there, and I got the time. I'm good. You're kind enough to have a clock where I can see it. I know what time it is. Don't break out the chicken yet, guys. Stay with me. These guys brought their lunch. Huh? Go figure. They left their nets. Listen, those nets defined everything about their lives. Define where they lived, define what they did, define how they made a living, define where their income came from, define how they spent their time. That was how these two guys went on. They left everything that defined their lives for an unknown proposition. Wow. Wow. What did the instructor say? I know this feels unnatural. Yeah. You think? I know this feels unnatural, but the more you do it, the more natural it becomes. Follow me. Close up. So they left their nets. They did it at once. They didn't stop to think about it. They just did it. Now that's a matter of faith, isn't it? To take on the proposition of moving from where you are, whatever you're doing, whatever's become comfortable in your life, and going to some place that you don't know, or to do something you're not familiar with, you have no control over, you have no knowledge of, and they do it at once. All right? So they left the definitions of their life, they did it at once, and they followed. Put your light in his star. Okay, that light was on the tip of a wing about 20 feet away from where I was sitting. The star was on the fuselage of an airplane a quarter mile away. And I was to move into such a position relative to that aircraft that when I looked out that wingtip, that light was centered in his star. Now, I don't know about you, but I enjoy controlling my environment. So that means when I'm in somebody else's $1 million airplane going quick through the air, I'm looking out where I'm going. And I want to know all this stuff. Look at the dials and gadgets to tell me if I'm actually still in the air. Handy information to have. But that day, in order to do what I was told to do, my full attention was not going out here. I had to surrender control, left the nets, and to surrender control of my life and place it in the hands of the pilot of the other aircraft, because I was looking here. I was going this way real fast, looking here, and doing everything I could to keep in a relative position so that as that airplane moved, I moved with it. Ladies and gentlemen, I have come from Mobile to Athens, Alabama, 6 hours on I-65, simply to show you this. This is the result of a period well handled. This is what Jesus expects to see of you living in Oz. This is the expectation of Jesus, that as he moves, you move. You don't have to go out and prove yourself to him. You just follow him. Your light, his star, it's your only job. Promise. That's it. It's the only job you have. Now the question is, how are you doing with your job? I don't know. So you might want to come up and tell me how good a job you're doing. Fair enough. I don't care how you say you're doing it. I want to look at your wake. I want to look at the froth behind you. And I want to know what a difference it's making where you have been. That's what I'm interested in. But more than that, I simply want to challenge you with the reality of a period to which you face every day. Jesus comes to you and says, okay, here's a new one. Start over again today. You've been following me, sort of, kind of. Once you tighten up, once you put the light in the star, I want you to match me mood for mood, so I'll job you have. How are you going to handle it? What happens next from the period in which you stand right now? Pastor, I believe that's all I have to say. This service is now yours.
Appreciate that word and that challenge. Question that I wrote down as Mark was preaching is, what Jesus do people see in me? Do people see a Jesus that's a quarter mile off, somewhere in the distance, that's somewhere out there? Or do people see a Jesus that's right here next to me? Am I truly representing who Jesus is? Am I truly following him? If they follow me, if they had to put the light in my star of my plane, how much would they look like Jesus? As we talk about these renewal services, and today again focus on commitment to God. Again, I can't think of a better illustration than what Mark just shared with us of what it looks like to be committed to God totally and fully, surrendering all control to him, knowing what his word says, and then trusting in his word to do what it says. He's given us the flight plan, if you will, in his word. We just have to know it, we have to follow it. We have to trust him enough to follow what he's given to us. And that means first and foremost putting our faith and trust in him as Lord and Savior. That means saying that I don't live for myself anymore. I don't do what I think is right and what I believe is right, what the word tells me is right. I do what God's word says is right. And that is to trust in him as Lord and Savior, that he is God, that he did come, that he died on the cross, and his death on the cross paid for my sins. And he set the way for me to go. How committed are we to Jesus? And again, the question I asked myself from this passage today, and encourage you to ask yourself today, is what Jesus do people see? They see Jesus, they see a Jesus in you. What Jesus do they see in you? What do they see in me? And my prayer is that they will see the true Jesus more and more in me each and every day. If you would please stand, we come to our time of invitation. I encourage you to think about what Marcus shared with us, sharing that story of what he had learned just a few years ago now, even as he walked with Christ for the rest of his life. And yet God still taught him, challenged him. He can do the same for each and every one of us. If God has pricked your heart today, if he's that resistance on the control, if you're pulling back and he's saying, no, I want you to go in the right way, that pulling into your heart, that pulling and tugging into your soul, don't miss an opportunity today to say, I need to get it right. You may not know exactly what's going on. Maybe you just need to come and kneel and pray here at the altar. Maybe you need to come and meet with Ron or I and just say, I just need prayer. Just pray with me and help me to understand. Maybe today you need to come and say, you know what, I need to just let go of the controls and let God really have control of my life and put my hope and trust in him as Lord and Savior today. That's the opportunity that we have today. That's what this invitation is an opportunity to do. Doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are, how long you've been a Christian, or how short you've been a Christian, or if you're a Christian or not. Today is an opportunity to say, I want to follow Jesus and follow him wholeheartedly, to commit to him. And I will renew my life with him today. As Mike leads us after I pray, this is your opportunity to come, move, and to make public what God's been challenging you in your heart privately over these last few moments. Let's pray. Father, we come before you today, and I thank you for the power of your word. And I thank you for the way it influences our lives. I thank you for the way it has impacted Mark's life and how he has come and shared that with us here today. But Lord, I know you don't want to just do that in his life. I know that you want to do that in each and every one of our lives here today. That you want to make that impact over and over and over again in our hearts and our lives. Father, my prayer this morning is if there is somebody here that does not know you as Lord and Savior, maybe they know about you, maybe they kind of sort of follow you. Father, they don't really know you. They really haven't given you control of their lives. I pray that you will encourage them, that you will challenge them, that you will convict them today of their need to put their wholehearted trust in you, to put their light in your star and to follow you. Father, my prayer is also for those that are here today that know you as Lord and Savior. Maybe they've gotten off track. Maybe they've gotten out of alignment with you, as we are so prone to do. Today they say they want to come back, to be wholeheartedly committed to you. Pray, Father, we'll have the courage to do what you're challenging to do in our hearts right now. Be followers of you. Complete, total followers of you this day and the days ahead. In Christ's name that I pray.